Individual liberty in modern times can hardly be traced back farther than the England of the 17th century. It appeared first, as it probably always does, as a byproduct of a struggle for power rather than as the result of deliberate aim. But it remained long enough for its benefits to be recognized. And for over 200 years the preservation and perfection of individual liberty became the guiding ideal in that country, and institutions and traditions the model for the civilized world. This does not mean that the heritage of the Middle Ages is irrelevant to modern liberty. But its significance is not quite what it is often thought to be. True, in many respects medieval man enjoyed more liberty than now commonly believed. But there is little ground for thinking that the liberties of the English were then substantially greater than those of many continental peoples. But if men of the Middle Ages knew many liberties in the sense of privileges granted to estates or persons, they hardly knew liberty as a general condition of the people. In some respects the general conceptions that prevailed then about the nature and sources of law and order prevented the problem of liberty from arising in its modern form. Yet it might also be said that it was because England retained more of the common medieval ideal of the supremacy of law, which was destroyed elsewhere by the rise of absolutism, that she was able to initiate the modern growth of liberty. This medieval view, which is profoundly important as background for modern developments, though completely accepted perhaps only during the early Middle Ages, was that the state cannot itself create or make law, and of course as little abolish or violate law, because this would mean to abolish justice itself. It would be absurd, a sin, a rebellion against God who alone creates law. For centuries it was recognized doctrine that kings or any other human authority could only declare or find the existing law, or modify abuses that had crept in, and not create law. Only gradually, during the later Middle Ages, did the conception of deliberate creation of new law legislation as we know it come to be accepted. In England, Parliament thus developed from what had been mainly a law-finding body to a law-creating one. It was finally in the dispute about the authority to legislate in which the contending parties reproached each other for acting arbitrarily, that is, not in accordance with recognized general laws, that the cause of individual freedom was inadvertently advanced. The new power of the highly organized national state which arose in the 15th and 16th centuries used legislation for the first time as an instrument of deliberate policy. For a while it seemed as if this new power would lead in England, as on the continent, to absolute monarchy, which would destroy the medieval liberties. The conception of limited government which arose from the English struggle of the 17th century was thus a new departure, dealing with new problems. If earlier English doctrine and the great medieval documents, from Magna Carta, the great Constitutio Libertatis, downward, are significant in the development of the modern, it is because they served as weapons in that struggle. Yet if for our purposes we need not dwell longer on the medieval doctrine, we must look somewhat closer at the classical inheritance which was revived at the beginning of the modern period. It is important, not only because of the great influence it exercised on the political thought of the 17th century, but also because of the direct significance that the experience of the ancients has for our time. Though the influence of the classical tradition of the modern ideal of liberty is indisputable, its nature is often misunderstood. It has often been said that the ancients did not know liberty in the sense of individual liberty. This is true of many places and periods even in ancient Greece, but certainly not of Athens at the time of its greatness, or of late Republican Rome. It may be true of the degenerate democracy of Plato's time, but surely not of those Athenians to whom Pericles said that the freedom which we enjoy in our government extends also to our ordinary life, where, far from exerting jealous surveillance over each other, we do not feel called upon to be angry with our neighbor for doing what he likes, and whose soldiers, at the moment of supreme danger during the Sicilian expedition, were reminded by their general that, above all, they were fighting for a country in which they had unfettered discretion to live as they pleased. What were the main characteristics of that freedom of the freest of free countries, as Nicias called Athens on the same occasion, as seen both by the Greeks themselves and by Englishmen of the later Tudor and Stuart times? The answer is suggested by a word which the Elizabethans borrowed from the Greeks but which has since gone out of use. Isonomia was imported into England from Italy at the end of the 16th century as a word meaning equality of laws to all manner of persons. Shortly afterward it was freely used by the translator of Livy in the English form, isonomy, to describe a state of equal laws for all and responsibility of the magistrates. It continued in use during the 17th centuries until equality before the law, government of law, or rule of law, gradually displaced it.